Hello, welcome to the Wrestling Show. I'm Doc Allen. If you haven't yet, please click subscribe. If and when I get 100 subscribers, I will start reviewing SmackDown every week. And I don't really want to do that, so go ahead and do that so I'll have to suffer for your entertainment. Today I'll be covering GCW Til Infinity. This was held December 31st, 2021 from the Carousel Room at the Showboat Hotel in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Our hosts were Dave Prazak, Kevin Gill, and at times Joey Janella. So, one thing I noticed right off the top was that attendance for this venue looked down compared to the last time I ordered a GCW show. And I don't know if this was because it was the holiday or it was a double shot weekend, so maybe the real crowd will be there the next night when there's some bigger stars in action. But attendance looked light, and I will say that throughout the show, the crowd seemed to grow fatigued. So, this was a long show. It went almost 5 hours, and went past midnight. So, Til Infinity might actually refer to the length of the show rather than just a clever title. So, anyway, they started with a 10-bell salute for the late Marcus Crane, who passed away within the last week or so. The opening match, we had PCO bringing out the GCW Extreme Championship for an open challenge. And there was a funny crack about how this title has been dormant since PCO left GCW for Ring of Honor exclusivity, and how so much for the 30-day title defense rule. It's more like a 900-day title defense rule. So Matt Tremont answered the challenge, and they started with some grappling. The fans were really hot for this. It didn't take long for them to bring in chairs, and unfortunately this match was pretty bumpy. I love PCO, but he was definitely looking his age in this one. And I don't know how active Tremont is these days, but he was definitely huffing and puffing. So they kind of went through the hardcore match motions. Tremont brought in a wired bat and missed. PCO then hit a moonsault where he landed knees first into Tremont's gut, which looked really bad. But that was enough to win the match at 12 minutes and 59 seconds. So this was a rough, slow-motion brawl. And I feel bad giving low ratings to matches where the guys involved take as much punishment as they did. Fortunately, it's only 2 stars. So up next was Cole Rodrick versus Tony Deppen. And Deppen had a chip on his shoulder to start, and he stomped a mud hole into Rodrick. From there, Deppen was definitely wrestling like the heel, disrespecting Rodrick throughout. Unfortunately for them, they went into the well of hitting moves to kick out at 2, and the crowd wasn't giving them anything. And they would have been wiser to read the room and shift into doing something else. Also didn't help that some of the offense didn't look particularly good. Rodrick hit a weak 619, but then followed up with a butterfly suplex into a cross-arm breaker. Deppen escaped and hit knees to the head for another really cold near fall. Then it seemed like they realized they had more time to fill, so they went back to the slapping and slugging it out well for a fighting spirit sequence. And Deppen ended up slamming Rodrick into a last chancery for the submission at 11 minutes 54 seconds, which did pay off some earlier arm work. Unfortunately, this was a total misfire. The near falls and false finishes were ridiculous and undeserved. And there were 2 fans egging them on for more, but nobody else in the room seemed to be buying it. This was a 1.5 stars. Up next, Joey Janella joined commentary, and he said he's trying not to get drunk tonight. He has a big match tomorrow against Scotty 2 Hottie, and he still might hit the bars after the show and lose $900 or $2,000 at the casinos. Who's keeping track? Up next was Ho-Ho Loon versus Jimmy Lloyd. You might remember Ho-Ho from the Cruiserweight Classic tournament WWE held a few years ago, back when it looked like they were moving the network into an awesome direction. And unfortunately, this was another pretty bad match. Loon totally had Lloyd outclassed to the point where it almost seemed ridiculous that Loon had to sell anything that Jimmy Lloyd had to offer here. And again, dead crowd and a bunch of false finishes and near falls that got no reaction from the fans. So Loon ended up hitting a Canadian Destroyer. Lloyd came back with the snowplow through 4 chairs and won at 7 minutes 22 seconds. Just an awkward clash of styles and skills. And again, it's time for somebody. It was time at this point for somebody backstage to read the room and say, "Hey guys, the constant kickouts at 2 are not getting over tonight. The crowd is dead. Try something else, for crying out loud." So this was just a star. So up next we had Jack Cartwheel versus Nick Wayne, and you might remember Nick Wayne is the sophomore from high school, and if I stop and think about it, that means that I've been reviewing wrestling as long as this guy's been alive, so that makes me feel great. And I guess I feel okay with most of my life choices. So this starts off with some friendly chain wrestling, and then they shift into a more athletic contest. Cartwheel definitely lived up to his name with many, many cartwheels. And, for being only 17 years old, Wayne really held his own in this match nicely. This was actually a very good athletic contest, and they stayed away from doing too many just hit a move and kicking out at 2. This actually got the crowd involved, and it took a lot of high-flying moves to accomplish this, but the match did get over. So it came down to a Phoenix Splash, winning it for Cartwheel at 13 minutes 11 seconds. This was heads and tails above everything else on the show so far. They actually tried to have a match before they shifted into false finishes, and this felt like a couple of jocks kind of enjoying showing off what they could do. This was 3.5 stars. Up next, Atticus Kogar took on Everett Connors, and words cannot justify how interesting Connor's ring attire is. He came out wearing pajama overalls with stuffed animals pinned up and down his pants and in his legs, and it went really well with his blue hair. So I wasn't a fan of this match either. It was another match where, for starters, Kogar looked like he had Connor's totally outclassed throughout. So again, I don't want to sound like the grumpy old man who's yelling at clouds or anything. My cat is destroying a bag. But one guy in this match looked like a wrestler, and the other guy did not. So a lot of the things that Connor's kicked out of looked kind of silly. So, to Kogar's credit, he waited a good long while before going for the skewers, and then finished Connor with a headlock driver at 11 minutes 57 seconds. Sad match. It was totally devoid of heat, full of silly false finishes that were unwarranted, considering that Kogar ranked so far above Connor's in the pecking order. But it gets a little bit of credit because Connor's stuffed animal survived the whole match, still attached to his legs. I would have thought for sure that Kogar would have taken his skewers to those stuffed animals for some fun cheap heat. So that's a missed opportunity. 1 star. Up next, Kogar wrapped his MC wristbands around a bundle of light tubes and set it down in the ring to pay tribute to his friend, the late Marcus Crane, and shared a hug with Connors. And then, perhaps in a more fitting tribute for his friend, once Connors turned his back, Kogar smashed the tubes over Connor's head, and that made me chuckle. That was more fun than the match. Yeah. What are you doing? Sorry, my cats didn't get their wet food breakfast this morning because we haven't done the grocery shopping yet today, so they're acting up. So next was Dante Leon and Ninja Mac versus Alex Zane and Blake Christian. And at this point, I feel like this show really needs a banger. And I'm like, oh good, these guys can probably do something fun. I settle back and wait to see what type of special, high-octane athletic match they might deliver. And this was a total dud. And it wasn't for a lack of effort. And actually, concussions might have been the key aspect to this. Because early on, they botched a lot of elaborate high spot attempts. Particularly Ninja Mac, who went for this, like, it was almost like a 450 sunset flip. But he took a bad landing and he clipped the back of his head against his opponent. And that could have knocked him loopy. So at that point, it might have been better to, go home early or just, improvise and take Mac out of the equation. Instead, they carried on for 15 minutes and 39 seconds, just botching everything. And whenever it looked like the match might have been stabilizing into something that could have been salvaged, another botch came about. So, and like even Zane was botching stuff, and Blake Christian looked really frustrated. I think he might have been the only guy in the match who actually hit his spots, and he was definitely working hard to try to save this, but it was no good tonight. So, it came down to Blake missing a flying double stomp on Ninja Mac, but then he tries again and hits the move and wins at 15 minutes, 39 seconds. Just an embarrassing, sloppy train wreck and a depressing imitation of better tag team matches. So it pains me to give this a dud, but it's a dud. So up next, Blake grabs a mic, says he feels like walking into the Hammerstein Ballroom as a champion, and he and Zane have their sights set on the GCW Tag Team Championship. And it's been a long time coming, but he wants some gold around his MFing waist. Probably needed to have a better match before it to make such proclamations to this crowd. So next was Dark Chic versus Colby Carino. And if you haven't seen Colby in action, he is the spitting image of his father, Steve Carino. And so I'm going to say this match wasn't particularly good. It was a little on the, pedestrian kind of, bland side. But it was a match, and it was competent, and they did moves that looked good, and there was like some psychology going on. Like it was a match. So on a night where there's been so much, so many dumpster fires on the undercard, that I appreciate that. So Chic ended up winning. She reversed Carino's top rope delayed suplex and hit a pump handle driver for 2. And then, so, again, a silly near fall. But I think Carino just did that to save face because she hit the exact same move again and won at 11 minutes, 59 seconds. So again, the match was kind of boring. It didn't really have anything terribly interesting or compelling about it, but it was competent, and that means a lot tonight. So that was a star and 3/4. Afterwards, Chic offered Carino a handshake, but he just spit at her and left. And, come on, guys. We're still living in a pandemic. That's gross. So up next, we had Young, Dumb, and Broke of Jordan Oliver, Charlie Tiger, and Ellis Taylor against the Second Gear crew of AJ Gray, Effie, and Matthew Justice. And this was a lot closer to being the banger of a tag match that I was looking for from earlier. So this match was all action, lots of high spots, and it did get over with the tired crowd. And I don't think I've seen anything from Tiger or Taylor before, and both of them, brought it in this match and looked good. Tiger in particular has kind of like this bruising way to him, so I hope to see more of him. So good match. The Second gear crew ended up hitting a Doomsday Zack Ryder, which is what Effie calls the Rough Rider, to finish Taylor at 13 minutes and 17 seconds. This show really badly needed a fun banger, and this provided a lot of great surprises and ambitious high spots with minimal slip-ups. So this was 3.5 stars. Then they went to intermission, came back with a 6-way scramble. Now, I wasn't really in the mood for this match because, the show was so long already, and I do think that scramble matches work much better as the opener of the entire show rather than like the post-intermission spot. But this was a good one. You had 3 big guys, Kelvin Tankman, Manders, and I guess to an extent, Shane Mercer, in there against 3 smaller guys in JJ Garrett, Marcus Mathers, and Yo-Ya. And the size dynamics made for a fun match. At one point, the 3 bigger guys were in there for kind of a makeshift triple threat, and then later the 3 smaller guys took their turn doing it. If you haven't seen Garrett before, he kind of looks like he has he's a throwback to the early '90s. He looks like he could be Scott Steiner's like 1993 Mini-Me, and I think there was some confusion from commentary. I think he's billed as Hot Steiner, but the commentators are calling him Haas Steiner throughout until somebody corrected them late. And, he's got this great throwback mullet. And then, Yo-Ya is a really small guy, but he's got a good look and he's crazy athletic. And he entered wearing Tony Deppen's jacket kind of as a troll job. So I guess they'll be matching up soon. So, this scramble went a bit longer than usual, but it was lively and interesting, and Tankman ended up winning with the Tankman driver on Mathers at 15 minutes and 15 seconds. So, good, interesting scramble. I like the size dynamics, and you might not like this because it was a shameless spot fest, but, what's supposed to happen when 6 guys go into the ring together and they're all trying to win as fast as possible with, in a one fall stipulation? So, sometimes a spot fest is the right psychology, and I would say that was the case here. Up next, 3 stars if I didn't say it. Up next was Charli Evans versus Allie Katch. And this was a really solid, overwhelmingly solid match. They, started off with some really interesting chain wrestling. They got silly for a moment where they were both in a bridged position, holding each other's knuckles, and then they, let go, but they stayed on their backs and, shook hands and then started slapping each other. So, somewhere I can imagine that, Jim Cornette's got this little, pain in his forehead, somewhere somebody's making a mockery of the industry. But anyway, the match continued on with some really good action. Got over with the fans who chanted GCW at them. It was pretty rough at times too. I think at one point Evans hit a gory bomb. Evans took Katch to Suplex City with repeated German suplexes, and Katch hit a Northern Light suplex, but she had taken so much damage to the knee earlier that she couldn't hold on to her cover. So again, I like false finishes like that where there's a psychological reason for why somebody couldn't get their pin just right. Charli goes for a jackknife cover, and then a Saito suplex. Katch countered into a pile driver and won at 15 minutes 40 seconds. So good match with simple yet effective psychology. 3 stars. And then by this point, I wasn't watching it live anymore. I watched it over the next couple days because the show was so long. But they kill about 30 minutes of time with a rap battle to get them to midnight so they can do a New Year's countdown. Anyway, I skipped all of that. Hope you don't mind. So, it's now after midnight. 2022 has begun, and it is time for our death match between AKIRA and G-Raver. And it kills me to say that I really didn't, I don't like to say this, I hated this match. I hated everything about this match. I hated that it went almost 30 minutes. I hated that it was as slow as it was, as just devoid of interesting use of the stipulation as it was. Just everything about it looked phony and gross, and it was like it was it was an ugly, violent death match, but without like any good narrative that you could sink your teeth into. It just kept going and going and going. There were times where it was like they totally stopped using the weapons to just have like a totally half-assed wrestling match. And I don't know, like, if it was, I mean, they either were too tired or had lost too much blood or just were, I don't know, maybe they were high or something. They couldn't seem to execute basic moves properly. And it was like they were spinning their wheels to fill more time. Like, this match must go 30 minutes, where, the crowd is totally dead and tired, and they probably would have appreciated a shorter match. So, and then the finish was embarrassing. They brought in this tripod ladder that they couldn't get it into the ring without it starting to like fall apart. So it took like the referee and like 3 or 4 guys from the ring crew just to hold the ladder that was like, being basically looked like it was taped together. They're holding it to stop it from falling over. And at this point, it's like, I think G-Raver was like, okay, forget it. I've been selling in the corner like a video game character. Well, this is trying to get set up, and it just looks so bad. And I think G-Raver wanted to like move past it and be like, okay, we still have another ladder with light tubes all over it. Let's just improvise and do something cool with that, rather than our planned finish. But no, they powered through, and everybody who had come in to help just held that broken, ugly tripod ladder in place so they could climb up to the top and do a really disgusting superplex through the tube ladder. And G-Raver got the win at 29-26. So this was ugly, slow, long, dangerous. It lacked anything resembling heat from the crowd, and the holy bleep spot at the moment was like not worth all the everything it sacrificed as far as keeping the match going to get it off. So just I feel awful because both guys were bloody messes at the end, and I'm giving them a dud despite that effort. So afterwards, AKIRA takes the mic, says he's on a mission to make the world respect deathmatch wrestlers. Well, he'd have to do better next time. But he plans on sticking around all year, and he wants to win some matches. John Wayne Murdoch interrupted and called out Alex Colon for a brawl. And I guess that previews their fight for later that day, because now it's, after midnight. So, final thoughts. At just under 5 hours in length, this was way too long. I know it was New Year's. Maybe next time they should, like, if they want to do a late show like that, start at 9 or something. And they'll probably complain about that, too, because I'm never happy. So the show is plagued with many flat-out bad matches, and I'm worried that this could potentially hurt the good vibes surrounding GCW as they head towards their Hammerstein Ballroom event. So I recommend that you avoid this one. I'm still going to check out the dive for this show that was taped the next day, but let me know if you've watched the show and felt differently. I know GCW isn't for everyone, and I am aware that sometimes my mood can impact how much I enjoy their shows. But from out of all the GCW shows I've ever seen, this one was like easily the worst. So please avoid. And that was Til Infinity. So if you can, click subscribe and like. Remember that the goal is 100 subscribers, so I'll start subjecting myself to SmackDown every week. Can't be any worse than this show, right? So, take care. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year's.